I'm John Dickerson, and this is Washington Unplugged. After 2 days in Moscow, President Obama attended the first day of the G8 summit in L'Aquila, Italy. I'm joined by CBS's Bill Plant, who is in L'Aquila, Italy. Bill, you're there for the G8, but I want to start with Russia, where you've just come from. How was the president received? Did he make any real progress?
Well, the president sat down with both Russia's president, Dmitry Medvedev, and he also sat down with the person who most people think actually runs the place, or has at least the primary voice, and that is former president, current prime minister Vladimir Putin. And it's very interesting. The president described Putin in a news conference the other day as tough and very smart, and he said completely unsentimental, which strikes most of us who have covered this beat and seen Putin before as being a pretty good analysis. We know that in their meeting, which went for 2 hours, double the amount of time was scheduled for, the president started out with a question, which was, how did we get it to the place we are today, meaning the state of relations between the U.S. and Russia, not so hot. And Putin answered him for 50 or 55 minutes, non-stop. But, according to the people who were there, it was not done in a belligerent or hectoring way. And they feel that they made great progress in setting out on each side exactly what the national interests of both countries are, and then promising to deal with them. So they're very up about it. Now, of course, some of Putin's people kind of trashed the meeting afterward, saying, well, he said that he wouldn't bother us about Georgia. Of course, they say the president did mention Georgia, and so on and so on.
So
the White House folks are very happy.
Coming out of this meeting, going in, I should say, they wanted to create a little distance between Medvedev and Putin, but it sounds like from what you're saying that Putin's really running the show, and that was only confirmed by the experience they just had.
Well, that's what everybody thinks, but they won't say it on the American side. But there was a poll in Russia that we heard about. When Medvedev took office, most of the people, or at least sort of 50-50, were willing to bet that he would run things. And in a poll just done a few weeks ago, fewer than 20% believe that he's running anything. But they're working in tandem, and they seem to agree.
Let me ask you about the G8 where you are now. What's the president going to try to achieve in his meetings there?
Well, John, these meetings, as you well know, have been going on now since the 70s, and the G8, the supposedly 8 most richest economies in the world, don't really run things anymore, and the meetings are kind of an anachronism, and instead of changing the format, they just expand. They will hold another summit tomorrow on major economies, and then they'll hold a summit with the developing nations. Altogether, there are going to be about 38 or 39 heads of state here. So in the G8 itself, the big concern, of course, is the state of the world economy. And the question is, should there be more stimulus? Or is it too soon to pull off the stimulus that's already out there and could cause inflation? Well, nobody expects much progress to be made on that, but there'll be a lot of talk about it. And then tomorrow, President Obama goes and conducts what he calls the Major Economies Forum, which is all about global warming. And that's his main issue here, along with world hunger. And do they think that they're going to get agreement on cutting down greenhouse gases? No, they don't. What the administration thinks, the U.S. administration, is that if whatever they get, they can use it to help push climate change legislation through the Senate as well as the House and come up with a bill that he can sign this year.
You are in L'Aquila, which was not the intended location for this. Why have you been hopscotching around, and you may move again?
Well, you know what? This town was, and it's no laughing matter, was hit by a serious earthquake in April, this whole region. There were almost 400 people killed. There are thousands who are homeless. We saw some of the tents on our way in from the airport. And so Prime Minister Berlusconi moved this summit from the place where it was intended to be, a luxury resort island off of Sardinia, to the earthquake area here to show some solidarity and maybe bring in some money. The locals are not quite sure that it's helping because it takes away, of course, from reconstruction efforts, but a lot of money was spent on this as well.
This is not.
And
this is not the first sort of odd move by Prime Minister Berlusconi. As the last question, tell me about his troubles and how that's playing out with everybody there as his guests.
Well, as everybody who pays any attention knows, the Prime Minister is always up to something. And at the moment, he's under assault by the tabloid papers for his relationships with a lot of young women. His wife is divorcing him over such a matter as that. And since she is not here at this summit to serve as a hostess, he's enlisted his minister of, one of his ministers, I forget which one, but she used to be a topless model. And there's a lot of laughing about that. And Berlusconi himself just brushes it all off as though there were no problem.
Well, it sounds like one of the most...
And I forgot one thing. Carla Bruni, the wife of French President Sarkozy, is not coming because she's upset with Berlusconi. She was born in Italy, but says that she's now very happy she's French.
Days of our lives in L'Aquila. Bill, thanks very much for the debrief. Have a good time. We'll see you back in the States.
Thanks, John.
One of the major issues the leaders will discuss during the summit is climate change. Joining me now from New York is Michael Levy of the Council on Foreign Relations. Welcome, Michael.
Good to be with you.
Let's start as broadly as possible on the question of climate change. What's up for discussion at the G8 and what can we expect in terms of an outcome?
Well, this week we're seeing the G8 meeting and a meeting of the Major Economies Forum on energy and climate, which will be on Thursday. People are looking for high-level goals from the broader group, which will include not only the G8 countries, but also the biggest developing country emitters. The big focus has been on agreeing to a goal to cut global emissions in half by 2050, with a big contribution from the developed countries, but also a significant one from the developing countries. That seems like a long way off, but there's a lot of hard work that would be required now to get there, and we're seeing a lot of difficulty even in achieving that agreement on what should happen 4 decades from now.
So if we don't get these targets, are the targets within reach, and if we don't get an agreement on them, would it then be considered a failure?
I think people were really expecting an agreement on targets, so it is something of a failure if we don't get them. It's very hard to see how we can get to agreement on what we're going to do in the next 10 years if we can't agree on where we need to be in almost half a century. So there's a challenge there. There are also other opportunities for progress. We might see progress on committing money to help the countries hardest hit by climate change deal with the impacts. We may see more commitments on technology development programs, but on this overarching goal that could frame negotiations going forward, this looks like the summit may not turn out to be as successful as some people had hoped only a few days ago.
Now, when President Bush used to attend these G8 meetings and the discussion would turn to climate change, there was a lot of skepticism about his intentions and just how committed to the issue he was. How are things different now that President Obama is there?
On the one hand, people are much more realistic. They really understand that President Obama is committed to this issue. He's taken big steps through the stimulus package. He's been pushing for legislation in Congress. At the same time, some people may have gotten a bit overexcited and not quite understood that the president is limited by American politics. And American politics say that the United States isn't going to commit to the sorts of numbers that the Europeans, the Chinese, the Indians are agitating for. So on the one hand, the president has more influence because people do understand that he is committed, but at the same time, he has this difficulty of moving people beyond some unrealistic expectations of what he can actually deliver to focus on the practical, concrete steps that can actually be taken.
Now, when you're talking about these numbers, you're talking about emissions restrictions, dates, targets, is that?
We're talking in particular about targets for what's going to happen between now and 2020. The number that keeps on getting thrown out there is a 40% cut from 1990 levels by 2020. There's no way that's going to happen. On the Chinese and Indian front, there's talk of the developed countries putting up roughly 1% of their GDP every year to help poorer countries in the world deal with climate change and shift to cleaner economies. That's also $300 billion a year, not going to happen. So there needs to be some realistic expectation setting. To some degree, when they were dealing with the Bush administration, countries could throw out fairly nonsensical requests. They knew that no request was going to be met on this front. Now they really have to think hard about what it is they can ask for that might be reasonably met. And the Obama administration also needs to very carefully think through its strategy of what exactly it wants from these countries, what it's willing to put up. And it's not completely clear that they have that strategy entirely in place yet.
President Obama comes to the meeting with the passage of the House energy bill in his pocket, and he's got the Senate to go. How much does the fact that he's actually achieved something domestically play into his negotiations with other countries?
I think it matters a lot. Again, it shows credibility. It shows that the political horse trading that needs to happen to move mandatory emissions cuts through in the United States can work. Of course, the Senate is still to come, and there will be challenges there. It also reminds other countries of what the president has been saying, that he is politically limited in what he can do here, and that they ought not focus too much of their energy on trying to get him to promise ever bigger numbers for cuts in the next 10 years, when the House process has made clear that even when you have Congressman Waxman and Markey, two very liberal congressmen leading the process, there's only so much you can get out of the system.
Is there any way, as a final question, Michael, that this meeting and the president's conversations and his public role in this will be something he can use in trying to get the Senate to move faster on climate change with its bill?
A lot depends on the signals coming from other countries. I don't think it's helpful if the Chinese and the Indians are balking, even on goals 4 decades out from now, and trying to persuade Congress that they are going to keep up with the United States and not gain a competitive advantage. That's a big challenge, and that's compounded by the fact that the Chinese president has returned home because of the situation there. It'll make it harder to have a high-level political breakthrough at this meeting.
Okay, Michael Levy of the Council on Foreign Relations, thanks so much for joining us. And thank you for watching Washington Unplugged. We'll see you here tomorrow at 12:30 on CBSNews.com. I'm John Dickerson.